During Canada's Strong and Free conference today, the leader of the BC Conservative Party, John Rustad, delivered a speech addressing how important it is to stay united as a country and about the large impact the federal elections outcome will have on Canada.
And this, to me, is something that we need to all be thinking about. Why are we not thinking of ourselves as Canadians? We have all these trade barriers amongst the provinces, and each province and each region has its different issues they're trying to push forward, and they're saying, oh, we don't care about the other issues. We've forgotten who we are as a country and what brought us together. And I think it's time we actually start thinking once again as Canadians. I mean, with what's going on south of the border and what Donald Trump has done, it's sparked a little bit of this nationalism, and I don't think that's a bad thing. We should be thinking about how we tear down our barriers and support each other. We should be thinking about how we actually renew Confederation. And I am really, quite frankly, concerned in this next election with what's going on that we will see alienation in this country, unlike we've seen before.
Our correspondent, Wyatt Sharpe, sat down with Mr. Rustad to discuss how Canada can move forward during such uneasy times.
I'm here with John Rustad, leader of the BC Conservative Party. John, you gave a speech earlier here just at the Canada Strong and Free conference. I'm curious, we're in a federal election campaign. There's a lot of talk about tariffs, about what the election could mean for various provinces, certainly British Columbia being one of them. From your perspective, how can we kind of move forward during such turbulent times while still staying united as a country?
You know, that's actually a very good question, because I actually look at what has happened from south of the border for the tariffs. It gives us an opportunity to actually start thinking of ourselves as a nation. And it gives us a chance to think about how we take down our interior trade barriers so that we can see goods flowing back and forth, how we look at actually utilizing our resources, but reimagining who we are as Canada. And I think it's a good opportunity to start having that conversation. Of course, the big challenge we'll have, because we're in the middle of an election campaign, there's lots of positioning and stuff that happens. But I think it's time for a vision of, a prosperous, strong, and free Canada, and how we can achieve that. And that's what I'm really hoping to see come out of this election.
And British Columbia is an example, too, of a province that started, with the Conservatives having more support than they usually would in the polls, certainly. And then it seems as if once Mark Carney got elected as leader, a lot of the NDP support then transitioned over to the Liberals. Is that a sign that maybe people in British Columbia are looking to Mark Carney as the person who can deal with some of, these financial problems that we're facing? And how do the Conservatives and Pierre Poilievre reposition themselves when they only have, a few short weeks to do that?
It's an interesting question, and you look at the breakdown, and ultimately, particularly for a younger generation, for ethnic minorities, for a lot of people that are really under 60, they're looking about how to build a future, and they're looking for that hope and vision. And I think they are tending to lean more towards the Conservatives because they see that. And I think the older vote tends to be more looking for more tradition, more things like healthcare and these types of issues. So there's a lot of issues at play, and I think what people need to embrace is how do we make sure that as a country we're going to be able to be successful. And this is a little off base for what you asked, but as a country we've seen 0.14% growth per GDP per capita for the last decade, every year. It's absolutely insane to think that we would accept this. We haven't seen this kind of growth, this kind of poor growth, since the Great Depression. By comparison, all of the OECD nations are 10 times our growth. The Americans are 18 times our growth from what we are. And so that slow growth has meant a huge decline, and I think everybody should see that as a concern, particularly when you're needing, whether it's healthcare services or other types of things. We should be looking at how do we improve our quality of life and services. That's where I'm hoping people will be. And in British Columbia, what we've seen is a lot of people are worried about what that future is, and so they tend to gravitate more towards what they know as opposed to what may be coming. And so that's where I really hope we'll be able to see a significant difference.
And just lastly here, before we conclude on the tariffs specifically, because Donald Trump has changed his mind quite a bit on this, even just recently changing his mind again. But so have some of our Canadian political leaders. You look to Mark Carney and what he's been saying. He is an advocate for retaliatory tariffs, but he also said in a press conference recently that Canada must understand that we come secondary to kind of the amount of trade that the United States produces. So how can we kind of balance that equation, the need for retaliatory tariffs, but also understanding that the U.S. has a much bigger trade market than we do?
Yeah, that's a good question. When you're the small trading partner and you're in a trade fight, ultimately you're going to lose. And so we need to make sure we push back on the things that we should and we need to push back on. But we also need to grow opportunities for us to create a position of strength. We are in a position of weakness as Canadians. We're not taking advantage of our resources. We are not taking advantage of our natural geography and the opportunities we have across our country. We are not diversifying like we should with other jurisdictions. And so we're very dependent on the Americans. If we were to strengthen our economy, get things going, have that diversification of trade, deal with our barriers, then when we're sitting down with the Americans, we're now coming at them with a position of strength because we have other options. And so we have to find that balance, pushing back, making sure that we carry on, as a reliable relationship as we can with the Americans, but at the same time understand that our future is in our hands by diversifying and growing our economy and taking advantage of the resources we have. That is how I think we have to deal with Trump.
Okay, we'll leave it there. John Rustad from the BC Conservatives, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me here today.